Hello, Chris here. This is a Tacomath video on solving in quadratic equations. Specifically, I'm going to be looking at the completing the square method in this video, although we'll just sort of review factorising and the formula. Then at the end, I'm going to have a quick look at how completing the square can actually also sort of help you solve it, can actually help you find out a little bit more about the graph of the equation that you're looking at. I'm going to make a second video where I'm going to look at how completing the square can be used to derive the formula. In this video, we're just going to look at the formula as you might already know it. Okay, let's move on to factorising. So x squared plus x minus 6 equals 0. To factorise that, we're looking for two numbers that multiply together to make that and add together to make that. Well, if I was making a video specifically about factorising, we'd play around with it a little bit more, but as it is, I'm just going to give you what I know the answer is, which is plus 3 there and minus 2 there. They're two numbers that add together to make 1 and multiply together to make minus 6. So then using the rule that if two numbers multiply together equals 0, then one of the two numbers must be 0, or both, but that doesn't apply in this case. So we set both of these to 0. I can't do that equals on the side trick. And then we find out that for the first one, x equals minus 3, and for the second one, x equals 2. And they're the two solutions or roots to this quadratic equation. Roots is just a fancy word of saying the solutions to this equation. Okay, so I'll just check with one of those. That's I've been doing this with 2 quite. I'm going to do with minus 3 now. What's minus 3 squared is 9 plus x, which is plus minus 3, which is minus 3, which is minus 6. 9 take away 3, that is 0. That checks out. You can do the same with 2 if you like, and you'll find out that it also checks out. Okay, so this is the formula, the familiar formula, which I'm not going to look at in detail here. Interesting to note the plus minus, which sort of brings out the two solutions that we have. In the second video I'm going to make today, probably post tomorrow, I'm going to look at this equation in a little bit more detail and how it actually generates the number of solutions that we want. Don't forget the A, B and C come from this writing of a general quadratic equation. The A is the coefficient of the x squared, B the coefficient of x, and C is a constant. And that's where we get the letters to plug into the formula to get the values of x. So that's what I'm going to say about it now, because this video is mainly about completing the square. So in the second video, we'll look at that in a little bit more depth. So here is a quadratic equation, which, to be fair, I could probably solve by factorising, but I'm going to use it by completing the square. Now, the first thing to do with completing the square is to take the coefficient of x, which in this case is 4, and halve it. Why do we do that? Well, it'll all become clear in a moment when we actually see we halved it, and we're going to add the half in there as the constant in this bracket and say that square. So that is actually a square. When we say completing a square, we're basically turning this and sort of making it into that, and it was what we call completing a square. So what does that equal? Well, before we start thinking about the equation, let's just actually multiply that out. I can probably do this without writing this out, but just for clarity, I'm going to say that x plus 2 squared is x plus 2 times x plus 2, and that's what squared means. And then we can, it's easy to actually look at all the parts. X squared plus 2x plus 2x, and 2 times 2 is 4. After a while, you can do that without drawing those arches, but some of my students like drawing the arches on. So there we go, just for absolute clarity, so we can see where everything comes from. And then we can gather together the x terms to make that. So that, what that is that, with one important difference, of course, because we've got 3 there, and we've got 4 there. So what we're going to do now is we're going to turn this into that by, when you're solving an equation, you just got to do the same on both sides. So add 1 to both sides, and we can rewrite it again down here. I did in red because that was like the side issue of the completing the square bit. So that's just solving the equation. We could turn back to black to make things stand out. So we've now got x squared plus 4x plus 4, which is the 3 plus the 1, and then the other side is 1. In solving by factorization, you're with 0 on the side, but when you're completing square, that's not the case. You want something on this side which is a square. So what we're going to do now is that is the same as that. We've just shown that by multiplying it out, by expanding it. So I'm going to, because I know that's the same as that, I can actually write that back in as x plus 2 squared equals 1. Now, the next stage, we're going to get a room out of room now. I can move the speed up a bit, but I'm not going to. We're going to take the square root of both sides. Well, the square root of x plus 2 squared is obviously x plus 2. And the square root of 1 is 1. Or, don't forget, it's also minus 1. Minus 1 times minus 1 is 1. So minus 1 is another square root of 1. So that's where the plus and minus comes into the formula, but we'll be looking at that in the second video. So now we've got two different little equations, which I'm going to start working up here. X plus 2 equals 1, and x plus 2 equals minus 1. Solve the first one by taking 2 of both sides. We find x is minus 1. Solve this equation by taking 2 of sides. We get minus 3. So there are the two solutions. X equals minus 1 and minus 3. And you can factorize that and see it. We get the same answers. Completing the square is normally done more often when you can't see a factorization. I did it with one factorization here because it was easy just to show that it worked. I'm not going to do another one now. The first step is to write it in this stage here using that as half of the coefficient of x, and then multiplying it out, comparing equations, adding the right thing to both sides, so, which is like the completing bit. That's a bit where we're completing the square, making the equation be like the square. And then we can follow the equation through as we have done there to get the solutions. That is called completing the square. Okay, now I'm just going to consider, as I said at the end of this video, I was going to just, I said at the start, that at the end, which is where we are now, I was just going to have a quick look at how we can find out more about our equation. So 4x plus 3. We've solved the equals 0 equation now, but I want to know something now about the line y equals x squared, sorry, x squared plus 4x plus 3, because we can use that to complete the square. So what we've basically done here is we've made this x plus 2 squared, but to do that we had to add 1 on. So really, to write this properly now, we have to take that 1 back off again. If you now expand that, get the what we had before, the x squared plus 4x plus 4. We're taking that 1 off, so that basically what we have is the same as what we've got there. So now we've got y equals x plus 1, x plus 2, apologies, x plus 2 squared, take away 1. Okay, so that actually makes it a bit easier to draw our graph. Now let's just change the line to mock up that's our axes there, and so that the line we're going to draw stands out. I'm going to say change to green. You watch some of my videos, I like to change the colour from time to time to make it clearer. So we know that, well, what is the lowest point on this graph? We know this is a parabola. That's the name of the, it's a smiley face. Oh, hang on, I'll turn my line off. Oh, we know is either a smiley face or a glum face. And actually we know it's a smiley face because the coefficient of x squared is positive. So it's positive. So we know it's like that. So we know that at some point on the curve, there's a lowest possible value. First of all, we know that it crosses this line at -3 and -1. We found that out in the solving the equation that we've already done. That's where it crosses the line y equals 0, the x-axis. But we also know that the lowest value this can have is when this thing is the lowest it can be, and the lowest that this can be is 0. When we're dealing with real numbers, that's a little point put in there for people who know a little bit more. So the lowest value is -1. They can't get any lower. Why can't get any lower than -1? Because x plus 2 squared can only get as low as 0. And also we know that that happens when x plus 2 is 0, so x equals -2. So actually we've got a low point here of -2, -1. And once we've drawn those 3 points, and we can work out lots of other points if we want to, but we get the general, we're looking for a sketch here. And I tell you what, I find the drawing, that's terrible. I find drawing parameters far easier on the page when I can use my hand. It's not something I can show you very easily online, but drawing parameters is much easier. You put the hand in the middle of the curve and use it almost like a circle. Drawing it on this is much more difficult, so I apologise for the wonkiness of that curve. Okay, I'm drawing a whiteboard. I'm not using this special software here. Okay, so that's it really. That's all I had to show you on completing the square. Using it to solve the equation in the first place, and then using the form we get out of it to work out where the low point is, and therefore helping us to sketch the whole curve. I'm going to be posting this video later on today, and then I'm going to be making a video which I'm going to post tomorrow, which shows you how to use completing the square to get the formula, and then having a look at the formula to see how, that tells us what sort of solutions we're going to get. Okay, so thank you very much for watching this video.